Greetings, everybody. Hi, Susan. Hi, anybody else who's here. Thanks so much for being patient. One moment. Let me make sure we're live on YouTube and Instagram. Having a little bit of technical difficulties this morning in my new studio. So thanks for joining and being patient. Please say hello and tell us where you're from in the chat box. And if you've ever seen an aardvark. They are widespread throughout Africa and they're pretty easy keepers. So they're actually in a lot of zoos in the United States. In fact, a lot of the zoos were publishing social media this week during our Aardvark Week. This is the week we celebrate National Aardvark Week. And then next week on Thursday is National Aardvark Day. So aardvarks actually get 2 special days per year. And so we're going to be sketching them together. Here's one of my little sketches from previously. And here's another one from a previous workshop. Now, if let's see. So I hope you'll join in here. Now, why are they so special? Well, we're going to be telling you about why they're so special as we're drawing them, because I want us to get started right away. But I want you to remember that think of drawing as a conservation tool. And so really be conscious when you're drawing that you're mainly trying to learn and not so much make the most beautiful drawing in the world. Practice makes perfect, as they say, but the first time you draw something, no matter how terrible it is, you still learn a lot about its anatomy. And so they do have interesting anatomy that's very similar to other things, like this cute little guy. This supposed to be a armadillo, and this guy, which is supposed to be an anteater. And of course, they look a lot like pangolins as well. So they share a lot of anatomy because all of those animals are ant-eating ant mammals. They eat ants and termites. Okay, so yes, let's keep going now. I'm going to make this bigger. You don't need to see me, especially because I've got the lighting situation focused on our little guy here and not on me. There we go. Okay, so first I wanted to do something a little bit new. Is that a lot of times I will take my photograph if I'm practicing sketching from photographs, and I will put it in a plastic sleeve. Now I know you've got some issues with the light right now being too bright, but I want you to notice what I will do sometimes is I'll just practice drawing it with a pen on top of the sleeve so that I can kind of think about the anatomy before I get started. Because the more you look at something before you start, the better. Let me see if I can turn this off. No, that doesn't help. So the more you look at something before you start drawing it, the faster and more confident you'll be with your drawing. And so, for example, again, here I have my photograph under a piece of plastic, and I want us to just look at the anatomy first. So they have this really tiny head, and it's kind of triangular with this long, thin snout. And then they've got quite big ears because they are something that needs to use their ears to find both their food and their prey. And then I like to think of when I'm drawing that I'm going to draw the vertebral column that goes up and down into the tail and sort of building everything on top of that. So the front here, we have the shoulder, big shoulder here, and a leg and a little ankle here. And then we have the other leg and an ankle and their claws. And then they have the main body here. And then they have the hips. And then the joint for the knee here and the ankles. And then again, the toes. And then we have the other foot kind of hidden behind. So again, their proportions are kind of interesting in that they are They are quite a long and skinny head. Hi, Susan. Yes, I'm glad you're here. Thank you so much. I hope you didn't miss the beginning and give up on me, but I did have some technical issues. All right. So, yeah. So I'm going to start off my sketch. I'm actually using some pretty cool paper. This is actually very thick illustration board. And it's just what I happen to have with me today. But it's a really nice medium. You can do a lot of fixing and erasing to it, and it's really uh, favorable for that. And then I'm going to start out with a pencil, and then I'm going to add some shadowing after that. We're going to bring in our little sun so that we can think about where the light highlights and shadows are. Okay, but the first thing we're going to do is just get that outline. And I'm going to be drawing a bit darker than I want you to, so that you can see it here. But I want you to try to just be as light as you possibly can, just like a feather light touch like this, which of course you can't see very well in the video. So I'm going to draw a lot darker. And again, you'll also notice that I'm not doing much erasing, that I'm just trying to get these basic shapes and erase once I'm done. And again, we're going to try to be drawing him first and sort of talking about the parts as we go. Again, thinking of sketching as a conservation tool. And like I said, thinking about these shapes as if this is the first time we've ever seen this animal, as if we're an astronaut that's gone to the moon. And this is an animal we've never seen before that lives on the moon. So we really want to study each part. Okay, so again, the first thing I might do is just draw a line that kind of represents the top line. So their head and their ears there, and following along the backbone, which is going to be really arched here. Very similar shape to the pangolin in terms of this arch. And then the tail coming off like this. Okay. And then I'm going to just very lightly block in the snout. And we'll put more details in there later. So basically this is our head. And then we've got those big ears because they are, they've got to listen out for their predators, which include things like leopards and lions and wild dogs. All right. And so then down to the neck. And again, we're going to think about how we have the shoulder here. So we can't quite see it, but if you can imagine this shoulder here, just like our shoulder, and it's arching back to the elbow. So this one's walking. So you can kind of think of that arch there of the elbow pushing back. And there's the little footsie. And I can double check if I'm about the right size. Oh, I'm drawing him a little bit bigger. Yeah. Oh, well, that's okay. Oh, maybe it's this. There we go. All right. So then we've got that. And then we've got the front foot. Again, this guy is kind of walking quite quickly, it looks like. And that front foot is coming all the way in front of where the eye is going to be. And it's sort of lifted up compared to this other foot. And you can tell that because there's a shadow that we'll draw that's not touching the foot, whereas this shadow is going to be touching the foot. All right. So again, just saying super light. I hope you guys can see this. Tell me, Susan, or anybody else who's watching, if you can see this. And I see that I wasn't pushing back this foot enough. He's really walking. There we go. All righty. And so then the belly, this guy's pretty fat. He's been eating a lot of ants and termites, nice and healthy. And again, I could double check how thick he is. Yeah, I've got him a little bit too fat maybe, but I think I've drawn him. Yeah, I'm drawing him a bit bigger than the photo, so that's okay. My measurements aren't going to be exact. And then we've got this big leg. And again, remember right here is the knee joint. And then we've got the heel court kind of, and then the digits of the foot. So again, we see that area here. So I just like to have that. There we go. And this foot should be about the same plane as that foot. But maybe he's walking a little bit away from us. So I think this foot looks like it's actually a little lower on the page. There we go. And again, not over rounding things. We want to really notice these angles of the hip and the ankle and then the toes. And then now we have the last leg here that's mainly hidden. And you can see there's just this tiny little white space here. That's what we call our negative shapes that can actually help us draw something really well. And you can even see its cute little back claw there. That's sort of separate from the rest of the foot, and it's higher than the foot. All right, and then we've got the tail, kind of fat little tail here, and not very long. We see it's pretty short here. And since, of course, they can move their tail around a lot, it doesn't have to be exactly in the right place, but it should be approximately the same length there. All righty. So do tell me in the chat box if you're still watching and if you're following along. So now that we're started here, we can add some more details. Let me get this out of the way. These are pieces of paper distracting. Tape. Okay. So I actually have my anteater kind of looking up and out onto the savanna a little bit more than this one. But again, that doesn't really matter too much. If you understand anatomy and what an animal can actually do with their body that might be normal, then that's fine. Okay, so let's put some details now in the face. That's one of the most interesting parts of the body. Remember, again, these guys are insectivores, and they have a lot of what we call convergent evolution with other insectivores in their face, like the pangolins and the anteaters and the tamanduas, and to some extent the echidna, and who else? Oh yeah, the armadillo. Although they have a little bit wider diet. So generally, all these insectivores have a really thin, long snout. So I can let's start with the ear here because that's where we're at. I'm going to get this ear. And they have to have really good hearing, again, because they've got lots of predators like hyenas and cheetahs and lions and leopards. So there's the ear. And again, I'm going to darken this up so you can see it. All right. And then that other ear looks a lot longer. It's kind of funny. Usually something farther away from us would be smaller, but I think it's because it's kind of bringing that ear a little bit forward. And maybe this ear is arched towards us a little bit. So kind of just like a horse, they can move their ear a lot. Hi, Susan. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you can see things. All right. So now with this characteristic snout of the insectivores, we've got the little forehead and kind of an arch where the eye is. And then it comes down to a big snout. So they kind of have a very pig-like snout. but they're not closely related to pigs at all. But we can give them a little nostril there, which you can't see very well in the photograph, but I'm going to add it. So they are not closely related to pigs at all. In fact, they're not closely related to anything else. They're in their own unique order and family and species. That means that the aardvark is the only species in its family and the only family in its order. So it's really, really unique. And some of the unique parts are things that you can't see that are inside the mouth, the type of teeth it has, and its skeleton that aren't things that you can generally see. Okay, now we're going to get this kind of furry neck here. All right. Oh, wait. Now let's get the eye. So they don't see as well as they hear. They definitely have better sense of hearing and smell than their eyes. But they are nocturnal, and many nocturnal animals have quite large eyes. So you can't be good at everything. And you can't see it probably, but I'm leaving a little highlight in the middle of the eye and giving it a little eyelid above and below, making it cute there. So, an animal can't be good at everything. So, you can either run fast, or you can climb high, or you can have eagle eye vision or very sensitive sense of smell, but you can't have everything. It's always a challenge. You've always got to pick and choose. Okay, so let's see. Let's keep working now on these front legs. So again, we see this neck here. It's got some wrinkles in it. And then you see the shoulder right there. So that's actually going to be a little shadow. So that's the same as our shoulder. So that's like the same right here is our shoulder right there. So, you can always think about when you're drawing something, think about that anatomy of the skeleton underneath. Okay, so now again, this guy is pushing really far back. It's got some muscles there, and then an arch, and then the toe. And they've got some really long claws. And so you can kind of see three claws there. And then they have this other claw that is kind of going back. And then the rest of the elbow, and then the furry kind of back of the foot, the leg. There we go. That's pretty good. So yeah, these guys have really strong forelimbs and really long nails. Again, very similar to the pangolin because they use those long claws and very muscular front arms to dig burrows. They dig burrows to sleep in during the day. Because they're nocturnal, and they have a lot of burrows throughout their range because they have a pretty big home range, and they don't want to be too far ever from a place that's safe to go and hide from a leopard or a cheetah or wild dogs or hyenas. So they have really strong claws. And then they're also using those muscular arms and sharp claws to dig up termite mounds and ant nests. Again, very similar to pangolins. So, and they have the same range as pangolins. Although, if you've seen some of my recent videos, you know how endangered pangolins are. So they're not really competing with them for habitat. But they may have a bit in the past when there were more pangolins like they're supposed to be around. Because they're both nocturnal, they both live in burrows, they both live in savannas, and they both eat the ants and termites. So yeah, they have a very similar ecological niche, the anteaters and the pangolins. All righty, so now let's get the belly here. And it looks like the belly's sort of furry too. Okay. Now then we can get these well, let's do the top line here, and then we'll get the back legs. So again, we're going to keep drawing, and then I'll give you some extra time to keep drawing while I tell you some more interesting facts about anteaters while you're working on your drawing. So let's do this top line here. So it's got the neck, and then there's a very slight arch where you can see the shoulder, and this is the closer shoulder, and then you probably can't see it in the photo very well. I'm gonna erase this, but you can see a slight bit here of the far shoulder that's part of this leg. So I'm putting that in, and that's actually the line that continues up and rounds here like this. And then you don't really see a hip area too much, except back here, this rounded area. And actually, I'm going to keep that a little bigger because that tail is nice and fat. So that hip area goes right back to that fat tail. And then it's a little hard to draw here. There we go. And then really some fuzzy fur coming down here to this front back leg. And then we have the front of the back leg, which again, always thinking of the anatomy. That's the knee. And then a little bit less fur here. And then we have those big toes and the big claws. I'm just not going to put too much detail in those guys. And then that sort of separate back claw. and then let's see, let's get this back leg in here. And let's see, I think I'm going to make this guy a little bit fatter back here. Looks like he's a bit fatter. There we go. That looks a little bit better, I think. And then again, you see that really tiny white negative space between the back legs. And then we see that back claw, again, kind of separate from the rest of the foot, sort of like a pig. But again, these guys aren't closely related to pigs at all. Maybe I'll give them a little bit longer tail. It's funny when I look at my computer screen compared to looking at my drawing right next to me, I can almost see the relative proportions a little better. Okay, so now I'm finally going to do some erasing. You notice I really haven't done much erasing yet because, I took some time to really look at the anatomy first and just draw things really loose. And now I can just firm things up. And I can get rid of some of these tri-lines, although these internal ones don't matter because I'm going to shade this guy. Okay. And then let's give him a cute little tongue like I did my other one. You see, this other one I did in colored pencil and I added a tongue. So remember, again, one of the most unique things about these guys is they're an anteater and termite eater. So just like the pangolin and anteater of South America and the tamandua of South America, they're going to be eating little animals on the ground. So we could just have some little sort of insects or whatever they're eating on the ground. We could draw those. And then let's see, where are we? Okay. Yeah. And please, if you have any questions, Again, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or wherever you're watching from, I'd love to know where you're watching, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and if you have any questions. So, um, again, these guys are anteaters. They're not closely related to anything else, but they do have similar anatomy, what we call convergent evolution of their shape based on the fact that they have a similar lifestyle to other anteaters. So now I'm just going to be telling you a few more facts while hopefully you catch up, and then we'll do some shading. So this is again Anteater Week, celebrated the first week of March, and then on the March 19th is not Anteater, sorry, Aardvark Day. Now these guys have a funny name. It is Aardvark, Aardvark, and it's got two A's. Just like the South African language called Afrikaans, and that's a type of language that's partly based on Dutch, from the Dutch people that came and settled this part of Africa hundreds of years ago. But anyway, they use double A's a lot. So just like Aardwolf, Aardvark means earth. And sometimes these are called earth pigs, also called the African ant bear. um, and they are really a living fossil. They haven't changed much since the Miocene. And there used to be more species, like a lot of things, because of changing climate over the millennia. So there's only one species now. And they live throughout southern Africa, well, south of the Sahara. So that's most of Africa, what we actually call sub-Saharan Africa. And let me be here so that I feel like I'm actually talking to you. So yeah, they live in most of Africa, most of the countries south of the Sahara Desert, a lot of different habitats, but they do need a couple things in their habitat to thrive. One is they have to have sandy enough soil so they can use those strong front limbs to dig burrows, because again, they have a pretty big home range and they have to dig big burrows to live in. Speaking of how big, these guys are about the size of a golden retriever dog. So actually a lot bigger than pangolins, which only get to be about a foot tall. The species that overlaps with this one, and you may have sketched that one, the Temminck's or Cape pangolin with me. And these guys actually can dig a lot deeper than pangolins with those really big front claws. So they can, I read that they could dig up to 15 feet deep. And just like pangolins, they can eat hundreds of ants a day. I read that they can eat 50,000 ants a day. So they're going to live throughout Africa. And what they need in their habitat, like I said, is the ability to burrow in sandy soil. And also those kinds of soils generally do have ants and then termites as well in areas where there's wood. So they can live in sort of deserty areas, open savannas, that kind of thing. And so they're not found in rocky areas or mountainous areas. Now, let's see. What am I going to say? Yeah, like I said, they can have a pretty big home range. They can move up to 15 miles. So they're going to have a lot of these burrows that they sleep in during the day scattered around their habitat. And so they're really ecosystem engineers. In fact, those burrows are used by a lot of other animals when the aardvark is not in the neighborhood. So that's pretty cool. Now, yeah, I read that it's pretty easy to find them and sketch them in zoos. They're not only in our local zoo up outside of Portland, but in Tacoma, Washington, and Omaha, Nebraska, Detroit, Michigan, Minnesota, Memphis, San Diego, Cincinnati, a lot of different places. Okay, so tell me if you're sketching along with me and if you're ready to move on. Now I want to start adding shadowing, and that's when it gets really fun. So that's why I have my little sun icon here. And in this photo, it's a little bit difficult to see where the sunlight is coming from. In fact, maybe this might have been photographed in a studio actually, because the lighting is kind of flat. But that is a good challenge for you when sketching to practice understanding three-dimensional form when there isn't shadow. And, when you're out sketching in the field, like if you were lucky enough to be on an African safari and you were sketching in the field, it might be cloudy or rainy or at night when the lighting isn't good. So you, as the artist, need to be able to understand the three-dimensional form so that you can make something look more realistic, even if we don't have nice highlights and shadows. Okay, but let's actually just pretend that the sun is just about here. So let's say it's about 10 a.m. And then we're going to shadow it like that, because the only shadows we really see very well are under the neck here and a little bit on the edge of the knee here. So when we start to add different values, we're thinking about not only where the sun is casting highlights and shadows, but also the pigmentation actually on the animal. And you can see that they're covered by this sort of sparse fur that gets a little longer here, on their legs and their belly and their rump. But some of their cheek here doesn't have much fur. And then they do have some whiskers that we'll have to remember to add later. I'll just put them here. And there's some whiskers on the eyes too. So we'll add those later. But yeah, let's go ahead and start shading. Now, it just depends, what kind of pencil you have, how you're going to be able to sketch and shade. But you're going to want to think about the different values. So you're going to want to keep some areas super light, and then some areas a little darker value, and a little darker value, and a little darker value, and a little darker, like the darkest. And then you might even leave some values that are completely white, like the paper. Like I could just add a little box there. I don't know if you can see this, but this would be value 0 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. So yeah, it's always good to think about that. Thank you. Yes, I'm so glad, Susan, you're watching and drawing. Great. So anyway, depending on what you're using as a drawing tool will depend on how you're going to shade it. And you can even, shade things if you were using a pen by stippling or cross hatching. Like if we had this pen, you could add shadows with stippling like this, like they did in the old days, or with some hatching or some cross hatching. So it's really irrelevant what kind of medium you have. You still want to think about this value scale of from 0 to 5 in this case. Okay, so what I love to use, and if you've followed me at all before, is that I love to use charcoal. And I'll use a little piece of sandpaper to make a little pile of this, and then I will paint it on with this stomp. And so I just like that because it's so quick. So I'm actually gonna make this larger so that you can see it better. There we go. And so it just makes it a lot more quick to get the shadowing in. So hello, everyone. I see some new people are joining us, and thank you so much. Again, we are celebrating Aardvark week, and next Thursday is Aardvark Day. And so we're talking about aardvarks and why they're so special and sketching them. And you see here are a couple of my completed sketches from previous tutorials. And so again, I was adding three-dimensional form using these colored pencils. I just used one color of colored pencil, this brown. And then here I was using just a very soft graphite pencil. So here I'm going to use a third way just to make it fun, the charcoal. So like I said, it doesn't matter what you use. You can just follow along, just thinking about those highlights and shadows. And sometimes it's easiest to start with the darker areas, because you might go too dark. So again, we're thinking about where our sun is coming from, and I'm going to add some really dark areas where the shadow of the neck is cast on top of the leg, and we've got some dark around the knee and here, and kind of on the belly here. And we'll blend this in better. And then we've got the shadowing here. And then, yeah, that can go pretty dark really easily. So it's easy to kind of blend it with your finger later or with a clean edge. But again, you don't have to follow along with me exactly. Just do your own thing. And then let's see. So yeah, those are the darkest areas from shadow, but then there's also darker areas because of the fur. So, sometimes you can get a little bit confused about highlights and shadows. So what I always suggest people do is turn it upside down. And you probably don't have this picture downloaded, but if you were on Instagram this morning, I did have a post where I said if you typed the word yes in the comments, you could download these high resolution images. So I think that was just on Instagram. I'm practicing with this new feature that lets you do that. So anyway, but even if you didn't, or even if you're not able to turn yours upside down, you can just look at mine here upside down. And sometimes just the act of turning something upside down lets you see those values better. Okay. And so sometimes I force my students actually to draw like this, to draw upside down, and that helps them to get out of that naming kind of mode, that left brain naming mode, and into the right brain mode. So like I said, isn't it almost easier to see how dark the limbs are and how there's some dark here? That's both a combination of shadowing and of fur. Yeah, great. So Susan says you're ready to shadow. Thank you. I'm so glad. So yeah, you can just, again, start looking at these areas. And at first it feels really wrong to try to draw something like this upside down, but it is amazing how you can see the shadows better. And again, just in general, see the values. And these techniques are so forgiving because it's pretty easy to lift and erase and fix them. So I'm just going to try to get mostly an overall medium value because none of this guy is the white of the paper except almost his ears and his cute little face and the tip of his tail. So I can just think about adding a lot of this medium value here and getting a little bit more of this stuff to paint with. Whoops, I got a little bit too much, but that's okay. I'm going to show you how to even that out. One way is just to use your finger here. But we see it's darker on the top, even though that seems weird because that's where the sun would be. But I think it's because it has more fur up there. And then let's see, the fur goes down here too, but the pads of the feet are a little bit less furry and a lighter value. And we really see that dark shoulder there. And then, yeah, again, here we've got some darkness here. And then it's a little bit light where you just see the cute pink skin. And then the neck here is pretty pink. And let's see, shadowing inside the ear. And that far ear is a little bit darker. And then the top of the head, we have some little bit more color. But then we want to have a little bit of shadowing on the bottom here, but still make it look like it doesn't have any fur. Okay, so anyway, let me turn that back because you might be getting really confused, especially if you just signed in. Like, what is she doing? But that's a classic thing that I do, and I always suggest you try that. Okay, so anyway, yeah, so he's a little bit of a mess now, a little bit of a hot mess. So we can just keep working on him. Now, I might even get a pen. We see the eye is really shiny and dark, and we want to leave a highlight. I don't know if you can see that. And then we can get those. Well, that's kind of obvious. Woo! A little bit strong. But there's some of his whiskers. And then I can keep shadowing a bit more. So, and again, you can too. Again, it doesn't matter what medium you're using. You're just going to still be thinking about values and values next to each other. So like here, the closer ear is a lot pinker. It's a lot more in sun than the back ear. And so that's where, I'll add a bit more. I'm going to put my glasses on here. Oh, that's better. There. Okay. That might have been a little too much. And then a little bit more shadowing inside that ear. And then behind the ear. And a little shadowing on the cheek. And there's the jaw. We could shadow that a teeny bit. And then underneath here. And, you can use, if you're trying to use this, you could use different sizes. Yeah, different size stomps, as they call them. So we're seeing just how dark some of this foot is. But the end of the foot is quite light. Just sparsely haired there. And then working on the shoulder. Now this back shoulder is in shadow a bit, so we could separate that visually from the front shoulder. I hope you guys can see this stuff. And then that front paw is quite dark. So most people give up a little bit too soon. Maybe they give up at this point. But this is really where it starts to get more realistic. And this does take a lot of time. And again, he's got some more darker values here. And I think I'm going to emphasize a little bit more the sun, because like I said, the lighting looks pretty flat. So let's just emphasize that his belly might be in a bit more shadow. Might be a bit more shadow under his elbow and his knee. Yeah, and then there might be a little bit more shadow on this part of the hip as it goes down away from the sun on the other side. So just really subtly a little bit darker. And I see a little bit more shadow in here too from musculature of the hip there. And then some more dark. Like I said, don't give up at this point, because sometimes you think, oh, this is looking terrible, but if you just keep working on it, there's a certain point where you're like, wow, that looks really realistic. How's that looking? And then we want to, yeah, and we can still fix some things. Again, like I said, that's so nice when you use charcoal or pencil and you can lift things out with your eraser. And this is actually my eraser, my Faber-Castell eraser that you can actually sharpen, which is super cool. And there's where I can lift some things out. Like if I feel like I had certain areas that were a little bit too dark, like those toes are quite light, aren't they here? And yeah, it can also just be a way that you can add some texture too. So like I can go like this all over the place, and it can look a little bit like fur, which again, you might not be able to see, but this is leaving some really subtle little lines that are helping to look like fur. Tell me if you can see that. All right. And then we don't want to make him look like he's just floating. So it's good to have some ground. You know, we've got some ants on the ground here. And, you know, we want to have this cast shadow touching these feet that are actually on the ground. Because again, this guy looks like he was in a studio. So there isn't very good cast shadow, but you would have shadow on the ground under his big body. Remember, this guy's pretty big, about as big as a golden retriever. And so if this sun is coming this way, you're going to have some more cast shadow behind him, like here. And then you're going to have a shadow that does not touch this foot since he's walking with it and lifting it up. And again, if I decide some things are too obvious, I can just lighten them. Okay, how does that look? Yeah, like I think this was just a little bit too much here. And maybe you want to soften this edge of the ear. How we doing so far? You still following along? So in terms of aardvark populations, it's kind of hard to tell because they are really shy and nocturnal. So it's hard to get a good idea of their populations, but they are considered not of conservation concern, though their numbers are probably going down because they are persecuted for the fact that they dig. So farmers and ranchers don't like them because they can make the ground uneven for the livestock and dig up crops. They're also hunted for bushmeat. So you can imagine that with this big fat body, as big as a golden retriever, that they could be persecuted for food, especially in areas that are having political unrest, which we're having a lot of in the world right now. Whenever that happens, people are forced to, get, calories where they can. And if political unrest has made it hard for, shipping and trucks to bring food to markets, or has made the food much more expensive, people are going to be more apt to go out and capture meat in the wild, which is really unfortunate. So I'm just doing some cleanup here. Speaking of what they eat ants and termites just like pangolins, but they also eat one kind of plant, and it's actually called the aardvark cucumber. It's a melon-like cucumber thing that's eaten for its water content. And it's really symbiotic with this plant because the fruit grows underground and must be dug up by the aardvark, then ingested, then the seeds dispersed by the aardvark in its nutrient-rich scat when they move away. I also read that, like I said earlier, they build lots of, they excavate lots of burrows to hide in, and when they're migrating in their 15-mile habitat. And those burrows are used by lots of animals like hyenas, warthogs, jackals, owls, pangolins, snakes, squirrels, hares, porcupines, and many of them use these burrows to escape deadly brush fires. Yeah, let's see. What else can I tell you? Yeah, they are the biggest animal that makes burrows. All righty. So where are we here? There we go. There we go. So anyway, that was the quick aardvark that I did for you. Again, I did a little bit more detailed, careful version in my longer hour-long workshop that I have inside my courses. Then I also did this guy. Oh, speaking of my courses, I do have my course called Sketching Mammals of the World for sale. And I had a link to that somewhere. There is a link. If you're in Instagram, you can find a link. The course is 75% off right now. And that means it's only $56 for my comprehensive course on sketching mammals. And you can also find that course just on my website. And that is at christineelder.com/courses. And just for fun, I'll show you a few of the other animals that are in that course. So one of them is the anteater, and that's another animal, like I said before, that has similar anatomy because of convergent evolution. And that's my drawing I did of the anteater that you'll learn how to do inside my course, Sketching Mammals of the World. And so this one you can see I did in the same technique of the charcoal pencil. And then I actually added a little bit of highlights. See these white highlights of the fur here? I did those with a kind of paint. So if you sign up for my course on mammals, let me show you. I have two huge books that keep track of all of my workshops. And so this is the one on the mammals. This is actually only binder number one of two binders that cover all of the animals you'll learn about if you purchase the Sketching Mammals of the World course. So you'll learn about armadillos, which is they also eat ants. You see this one's eating ants. You'll learn about bats, learn about bears. What else? Beavers, pandas, bighorn sheep, more bats, dolphins. So I have several workshops on dolphins, several workshops in my course on elephants, the Asian and the African elephant, ferrets. So coming back to North America, giraffes, and so, oh yeah, hippos, horses. If you know me, you know I love horses. In fact, later on this afternoon, I'm going to go out and visit the horses that I help care for at the rescue center. So I've done several workshops on horses you'll learn about, including the wild Przalski's horse. What else? Oh, jaguars. And in that workshop, I teach you a lot about understanding the anatomy, the skeleton underneath, so you can really understand where the angles are from the joints and draw something more realistically. And I have a handout that you get to practice with. The kangaroo rat, of course, the pangolin, and that's just binder number one of two binders that cover all the animals in that course. So again, if you check out my website at christineelder.com/courses, or if you're watching on Instagram, I have a direct link in my profile, in my link tree. You'll get 75% off my course. And so I love teaching people about drawing animals, especially mammals. And people love to draw mammals because, of course, we're a mammal, and there's lots of mammals in people's lives, like horses and dogs and cats, that they might want to sketch. Okay, well, I've kept you long enough, and my computer says that my battery saver is on because I don't have this laptop plugged in. So I'm going to finally let you go. It is a beautiful Saturday, so I hope you get outdoors and enjoy it. Or no, is this Sunday? The days go by so fast. I'm so confused with the time change, too, here in the United States. So anyway, I hope you really enjoyed learning about aardvarks and learning a bit about their unique biology and anatomy, and how their anatomy is similar to a lot of the other unrelated animals that eat ants, like anteaters and pangolins and armadillos and echidnas and porcupines. And yeah, so, and I hope you enjoyed just practicing sketching and maybe doing a little bit of three-dimensional form. And so, yeah, I hope you have a wonderful day. And thank you, Susan. I'm glad you say my drawing looks good. It's a little bit challenging sometimes to draw something live while we're talking, but it's the most fun, and I love to interact with you guys. So if you have any questions, I think you can put them in the chat box and I can get back to you, or you can always email me at hello@christineelder.com. Okay, well, I'm going to get going. and hope you have a wonderful day. And again, don't forget to check out my course on sketching mammals of the world at my website at christineelder.com/courses. It's now on sale for 75% off, which is only $56. And that works out to be just about $1 per hour of content, because it's my biggest course and I've got lots of animals I teach you about, as well as the basics of how to sketch fur, how to sketch moving animals, understanding the anatomy underneath, how to sketch arms and legs and digits and faces and all of that. Okay, well, anyway, happy National Aardvark Day, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I got to get going. Okay, bye bye.